All right, welcome everybody to our Thursday night product training call. My name is Alan Jones. I'm the Director of Research for Make Wellness, and we have Dr. Mark Bartlett, who is our Chief Scientific Officer at Make Wellness.
Yes, hello everyone. And we're going to shake it up a little bit today. So that's what we've been doing the last few weeks, right? We talked about having a curriculum for you that kind of makes sense from beginning to end about peptides, about all there is to sort of know about peptides, especially our precision bioactive peptides and some of the products. But we we have difficulty, don't we, Alan? Like walking, breathing, and chewing gum at the same time. So we know that the questions are just flying like fur when we are doing these podcasts, but we don't really have the ability to sort of focus on those. So a lot of you have said, hey, we really want you to answer some of these frequently asked questions. Right, Alan?
That's right. Yeah, tonight we're going to get that chance, Dr. Bartlett, and I'm excited. I know we've gone through, I don't know how many hundreds of questions, and we've kind of pared it down a little bit, and so I think tonight's going to be an exciting call for everybody. We get asked these questions all the time, and I think tonight's going to be a great learning and a great teaching opportunity for us. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of questions, and Alan and the team have done a really nice job of sort of putting them into categories. But we also know that, like, okay, you can ask a question, we can answer the question like robots. But we hope that we can, in the spirit of being teachers and having the heart of teachers tonight, will we use those questions and we'll probably expand on them a little bit and sort of use it as an opportunity to educate around that as well, right?
Yeah. And I think, another part, Dr. Bartlett, I think the more we educate, and I know you and I, we talk about this all the time, but one of our main goals in doing this is to give our affiliates the confidence that they need to be able to talk about these products as well. And so hopefully tonight we can increase your confidence, we can increase your knowledge base, and really give you some super good nuggets of information that you can go out, use and use to build your business as well. So yes. I think that's a major goal of ours tonight.
Yep.
So what do you say we get started?
Let's go. Yes.
All right.
First question.
All right. So the first question tonight, basically this category is, product efficacy, product results. And one of the main questions we get, of course, regarding our peptides is, what is the source of the peptides in each Make Wellness product? And of course, we know that we have 4 Make Wellness products that have peptides. We have 2 that do not. But, Dr. Bartlett, what is the source of our peptide in FIT?
Well, let's just do overall the source of peptides, right? And the next question, we'll preempt it a little bit, sort of talks about what's the difference between ours and Therapeutic. And we'll go into that in more detail. But basically, I think a real fundamental fact is that our peptides are all sourced from plants or animal products, right? So they're all found in nature. They're all natural. They're not synthesized in a lab. They are natural products. So 3 of them from plants and 1 from whey, which is a milk byproduct, correct?
That's right.
So that's the start. That's where it all starts. And we can get specific. Alan, why don't you go ahead with the specifics in each product?
Yeah. So if you look at FIT, and really what Dr. Bartlett's talking about is in every one of our quote sources for each individual product, it's basically the protein component is where our peptides are derived from. And so proteins are found throughout the entire plant and animal kingdom. We know that there are literally billions and billions of available peptides in both the plant and animal kingdom throughout the world. And hey, that's one of the things that makes this so exciting, is the number of peptides that we know haven't even been discovered yet in the plant and animal kingdom. So if you go back to FIT,
man, what a first question! Like, we could go on for hours on this one alone. It's so fun.
We could, no doubt. So, the answer to this question could be really, really enormous. So, but no, if you look at fit, we know that the source of the peptide is the fava bean, right? It's fava bean protein, and so that fava bean protein is put through a process that essentially concentrates those peptides, protects those peptides. And so it's the peptides derived from fava bean in the fit that is the source of our peptides there. For lean, the source of the peptides in lean is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is essentially a yeast. And that yeast, that Dr. Bartlett, is that yeast not one fascinating organism in the world? I mean, how many things do we know that have been derived from this one yeast?
Right.
And the research on it has been for years, right?
Yes, it has been because it's, it has been used for fermentation products, right? And for rising bread and for making beer. And interestingly, there was a time when drinking water was not a safe proposition in most parts of the world. And, I understand that it was safer to drink beer, for example, because the yeast, that same yeast that we're talking about, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, fermented the water and made this product that was actually safer to drink maybe than the local water supplies. And I imagine that a couple of hundred years ago, most people that you met were half drunk half the time. But really what it did was we learned and were so fascinated by this organism that we have learned so much about it. And we've learned about the bioactivity of the yeast in various ways. So not just the protein source from the yeast, but in this case, almost accidentally, which is will be a theme that we'll talk more about, is a scientist in Korea discovered, hey, part of the bioactivity of this yeast is a peptide. And that peptide has an ability to, let's talk about play with the systems of the body that are involved in satiety and feeling full after eating food. So it's a wonderful peptide that has been discovered there that's in that lean product.
That's right. That peptide, that there is tremendous research on yeast, and I'm glad you brought up the point about basically, essentially, for all practical purposes, and I've heard this said before, and I've heard this claim before, is that beer or fermented grains actually saved mankind because the drinking water was so contaminated that you couldn't drink it; it would kill you. But that just goes to the show that there are multiple mechanisms of actions of various peptides. And one of those mechanisms of actions that we've discovered is that it is basically a very, very powerful antioxidant. There are other ones that show that certain peptides are very, very powerful antibacterial agents, which in the case of the water, that's where that came from. And so these peptides have tremendous actions throughout the course, not just the actions that we use them for in our product, but there are other tremendous actions as well. And so let's move on now. Let's go to our ENERGIZED product. Our ENERGIZED actually has two sources of peptides. The first one is the source of whey protein, which is an animal-based protein. That's right. And then the second peptide is actually, it comes from ginseng. So they are ginseng peptides in that product as well. And so there are two sources of peptides, and one helps to increase energy in our brain. The other one helps to increase or actually decrease levels of fatigue in our body physically. So ENERGIZE is a tremendous mental and physical energizer as well. Not just a mental, not just a brain, not just a stimulant. It's tremendous.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because, sorry to interrupt. We interrupt each other all the time.
That's okay.
Yeah, ginseng, which has, we've already identified some bioactives in ginseng called ginsenosides, right? And ginseng is well known for its sort of help in supporting human energy production. I think this is an area, though, that is kind of blossoming into a new area. It's like, oh, well, there are other bioactives in the ginseng too, some underappreciated bioactives. And in this case, we are the peptide company, natural peptides. So there's more to learn in this area, but it's certainly, a great direction.
Absolutely. So our last product that contains peptide is a product called Focused. And here's the interesting thing about Focused. I'm certain that most of us have heard about an herb, typically a botanical extract called a ginkgo biloba. And ginkgo, most of the herbal extracts of ginkgo actually come from ginkgo biloba leaf extract, right? And so in this particular case, the peptide for ginkgo was actually discovered in the ginkgo fruits. So now we found a tremendous benefit of ginkgo biloba fruits. Dr. Bartlett, how about that?
Yes, again, it's like the world has woken up to the potential of these bioactive peptides. And, there are geeks like me and Alan who have known about it for years. I mean, the entire genetic code is all about stringing together. I mean, the message that's there, all of that information that is there to make and maintain the human body, the whole basis of it is the DNA that is encoding for amino acids and stringing them on a bead to make proteins or peptides, either as structural or as messengers for the body. And like behind me, you can see, like I think I've shared this with you before, there's a chart on my wall, and every arrow on that chart in the immune system is basically a protein or a peptide designed to interact with the receptor somewhere in the immune system and just get things going and help you survive. So it's just really cool that even some of these old bioactives like ginkgo and ginseng that we've known about for years and we've identified their actives, we're starting to discover that there are peptides in there as well.
Yeah, Dr. Bartlett, it wasn't too long ago that people thought of proteins as being purely something that it was used to build muscle with, right? And that wasn't too long ago. And it used to be the same thing that people used to think that bones are for nothing but to hold our skeletons up for structural integrity. And we're finding out today that is so wrong. We were so far off in the way that we thought. And now we're understanding that muscles and bones and even our adipocytes, our fat cells, are resources of these massive resources of these messengers that talk throughout our body. Yep. And we talk about a lot. We know that there's about 200,000 peptides in the human body that we know of today that have been identified. We actually only know what about 7,000 of those peptides truly do. So the sky is the limit as far as the amount of knowledge that's out there to be discovered with peptides and their impact on the human body. We're not even close to knowing what that ultimately is.
And the fun part is that all of you are on this journey with us, right? This journey of discovery. I feel like as we learn more, we'll share with you. We'll be launching products that are, again, based on peptides, help you understand how they work. And, the difference is people are really feeling it. It's making a difference in people's lives. So one journey ahead of us.
Yeah, truly. Now, Dr. Bartlett, we know, and we get asked a lot about therapeutic peptides, right? And
that's question.
And I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And so I'll be honest. When I first came to work with Make, and when I first started talking with Justin and Truman and the Make executive team about coming to work with Make, I had no idea what a bioactive peptide was, but I did know what a therapeutic peptide was. And I had to really do a lot of research and adjust my mindset into learning that, hey, there are two types of peptides in this world. There are therapeutic peptides and there are bioactive peptides. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a description of what is different about those? And then the follow-up question to that we get asked a lot is, are our peptides in our products, are they based on therapeutic peptides like BPC 157 or TB 500 or ipamorelin or some of the other therapeutic peptides that are well known in the injectable peptide space? Are our products based on those?
Yeah, that is the second question that we get very commonly asked. Are the peptides based on therapeutic peptides? So the question is, are they based on it? But I guess, as you said, Alan, well, what's the difference? Maybe some people don't even understand the question. So yes, I think one of the first and best examples of a therapeutic peptide is a peptide that's used in the medical profession. And the first one is insulin, right? So insulin is a really good example of a peptide. I think we call that therapeutic or medical. Maybe there's a distinction there as well, but I'm just going to draw the line right in the middle and say, yep, there's therapeutic and there's bioactive natural peptides. And these therapeutic peptides like insulin, they discovered very early on, wow, it's a life-saving peptide. But if you try to eat it, all peptides, just like proteins, they've got that same amino acid structure, they are subject to being broken down. So you have something like a protein, and let's say you eat this protein here, each little ball is like the amino acids, and there are enzymes that break them down. And so insulin doesn't survive the GI tract. Insulin was once derived from dogs and then I think pigs, but now I think they synthesize it. And then that becomes now another major distinction, that therapeutic peptides, as I understand it, are all synthesized in a lab. And sometimes they're redesigned a little bit so that they have a longer half-life or basically last longer in the body. And also that even when you inject a peptide, it will be destroyed by enzymes that are in the blood and the tissue. So they kind of design them especially to last a little longer. I think I got that right, Alan? So synthetic and generally used in medicine and generally quite strong, like very potent effects. Those are the therapeutic. And then what we're talking about, our peptides, are derived from nature, as we've just explained. And we just explained to you that, the four that we have in our 4 peptide products are derived from the fava bean, from yeast, from whey, ginseng, and ginkgo. What did I miss, Alan? That answer?
No, I think you answered the question perfectly. I think, it's very important for us to understand that therapeutic peptides are typically drugs. They're treated as drugs. They're prescribed by physicians. They're typically injectable as well, whereas bioactive peptides are derived from our foods. They're not by prescription. They're not meant to treat a specific disease or illness. And most importantly, they are utilized to optimize our own health and wellness in a very natural way. So they're food derived, naturally derived, and they optimize our health and wellness. And
right. The question actually is, let's look at it. Are the peptides that we use based on therapeutic peptides like BPC 157 or TB 500? And I would actually say, well, let's rephrase that question. In actual fact, the therapeutic peptides are based on peptides that were found in nature, like the kind that we use, right? So, for example, Ozempic and those drugs, they are actually mimetics or analogs of a peptide that you find in the body, GLP-1, right? And they redesign it and make it last longer, resistant to breakdown, and it becomes injectable. The BP157, that is a peptide, a therapeutic peptide that's known to be really good for healing. That's something that they found in the human body. There are others. Again, they found them. They said, well, this works for that receptor. Let's modify it. We're sticking to the natural, though.
That's right. Yeah, an interesting thing, you talked about the Ozempics and the Wegovy's. An interesting point to make is that the primary peptide used in those is a venom-based peptide. It's actually discovered in the venom of the Gila monster. And so think about that. So we have peptides literally everywhere.
Yeah.
So here's another question that we get all the time. And I think this is a very important question, and it helps to distinguish between a therapeutic peptide and a bioactive peptide as well. But how do we demonstrate that the bioactive precision peptides and Make Wellness products are bioavailable and survive gastric digestion? And so, yeah, so that question I would love to hear, because I think it's very important for our affiliates to understand that you just returned from a huge meeting with a major vendor, and you were able to go in and spend a lot of quality time in their facility, in their research organization, and observe a lot of what goes on there, right?
Yes. So I love that you guys are asking this question, that it's such a common question. And it really demonstrates that our audience has quite a level of sophistication in the science, right? But yes, you've observed. Okay, Mark just said that there's no sort of oral insulin yet. They just haven't sort of cracked that nut. That peptide has a particular structure that will be broken down in the GI by the acid and mostly the enzymes that are in our gut that will just break down that peptide as if it were a protein into all of its constituent little amino acids that are then used as building blocks for protein in the body and for peptides and for structural and everything else. So what's the difference there? And like you're telling us, okay, you can actually consume these and they survive. Well, it turns out that some of the peptides actually are able to resist the enzymes and things that will break them down in the GI. Some of them are special. It's just part of their structure. So if a peptide is kind of linear and has the right combination of amino acids, then the right peptidase will break it down very easily. But there are certain structures that are maybe a little bit more globular. There are certain combinations of those amino acids in the chain that make them more resistant. So a great example is just from peptides in the human life cycle. When a baby drinks its first milk from the mother, we know that that's called colostrum. Colostrum is not just getting all choked up here. It is not just a food. It actually has peptides in it that are bioactive. And so we know about that now. We know that actually the mother's milk is full of all of these immune factors, including immunoglobulins. It's like, wow, that's really weird. Like these are the antibodies, right, that are usually in the blood. And most of them actually, if you subject them to stomach acid or enzymes, they'll just break down in a heartbeat. But there are certain immunoglobulins in the colostrum and mother's milk that are able to resist breakdown. Now, these are full-blown sort of multi-subunit proteins in a Y shape, but they're actually resistant. So Mother Nature kind of designed these ones to work perfectly to protect the baby. And it's quite magical, really, because the mother, let's say mom is exposed to certain viruses and bacteria, and maybe she got sick. Her body develops these antibodies that then are expressed in the milk that give the baby protection from exactly what the mother is experiencing in her environment. But there are other things in the milk that are peptides, and we know the names like defensins that actually help the baby's immune system and do all sorts of things. So there's a great example that nature does provide peptides that can survive the GI, and our task would be to find those same peptides. So, Alan, you mentioned that the peptide that is in FIT was found in the fava bean. And in fact, there are at least two in this product that we have, right?
That's great.
One is a sort of a nice antioxidant, anti-inflammatory type peptide. The other is one that's acting on sort of that growth factor receptor area that preserves lean tissue and muscle. So pull it out of the fava bean. We better make sure that it is going to be bioactive, meaning that it survives the GI. We've asked all the questions. We know what questions to ask, but trust and verify. So yes, actually, as you referred to, I just got back from Ireland. I met with the biotech company there that was able to actually crack that nut and pull that peptide out of the fava bean protein. Mm-hmm. And it's called PeptiStrong, and you'll see that on our label. What did they do to make sure that it survived? Well, they have this world-class gold standard model of a simulated gastric solution. So everything that we have in our stomach, and it's like pH 2, meaning highly acidic, like almost as acidic as battery acid. hydrogen chloride, right? HCl, acid, and also a bunch of enzymes and things in there. So this gastric solution, then you can put it in a test tube and put those peptides in there that you've extracted from nature, and shake it up and do whatever it is to simulate what the GI would be doing, and expose it to enzymes, and then re-examine it using some pretty high-tech equipment like liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry, which can show you that those amino acids are still intact. And then the next step is actually to put it on a model of the GI. So we have these GI cells. The tissue that they use, the cells, is called Keiko-2 cells, and they form a monolayer on a basement membrane of the collagen and everything that you would have in the GI. And you can put it on the top after it's been sort of subjected to the gastric acid solution, just like in your stomach. And then let's see what comes through the other side, because the cells have tight junctions, and there's acid on one side, that you've already treated it with. Does it make it through? Let's put a measured amount on the top. After time, take the bottom part and then go test it again and make sure that it's there. So that's I don't know if I missed anything there, Alan, but when I was at this particular manufacturer, this biotech company, that's exactly what I was looking for, to make sure that they were doing that, and they are.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And when I was a CEO, Dr. Bartlett, of the pharmaceutical company that I was at, I was a CEO of that company for 3 years, and we were actively involved in a lot of research and development of new drugs and drug delivery systems. And we had that same gastrointestinal stimulated digestion as well, because you had to, and they are hooked up to HPLCs and GC mass specs, and they're hooked up to all these, these different, very, very precision instruments that can measure time and amounts of whatever active compounds. And it is so high tech, and people don't understand that, when you take a bioactive precision peptide, or say a protein hydrolysis like we have on our fava bean, and you can put it through this system, it simulates gastric digestion almost identically for every single person. And so it is so important to understand the amount of testing that goes through. And people ask, well, how do you know your products are bioavailable? How do you know they're active? Well, number one, look at all the testimonies we're getting now. If our products didn't work, we wouldn't be getting testimonies like we're getting. And so, and these are not, some just random testimony here or there. It's like testimony, and which is excited to see. We love seeing that. I know I'm getting my own results. I'm my testimony. You talk about yours all the time as well, and being able to do more pull-ups and stuff. And so it's one thing to see the testimony. It's another thing when you're actually physically at the lab and start to understand, wow, these things are highly tested. These things are proven with science. And so I was so excited for you to get to go there. I'm glad I didn't have to, because I didn't want to spend 9 hours on an airplane. But I'm glad you got to go
to
there.
Iceland in the middle of winter. Yeah,
exactly.
So I described then how those things are tested in vitro. That's what we call it, in glass, right? With cell culture monolayer, and with this high-tech equipment that can measure before and after. The one thing that I didn't mention yet was actually what you call in silico. So silica also means glass, but in this context, it actually means in the computer. So now we have these computer models. So if you look at this, like every color represents a different amino acid. So you've got maybe this is arginine, and this is 2 lysines, and maybe arginine again. Maybe this is leucine. You've got this structure, and each of those amino acids actually has a particular quality. Some are actually negatively charged, some might be positively charged, some might like water, and some might not like water. And what happens is when those, we know about those amino acids. So if you can feed actually that information into a computer, the computer then can tell you exactly how it will fold based on what part loves the water, what part loves the acid, the lipid. and based on whether it's stiff or whether it helps to turn. And so actually then, based on that primary structure, in an in silico model, we can predict exactly how it will fold and how resistant it is to breakdown by peptidases. So you've got that. Then you've got the actual testing in vitro with the cells, and then human clinical studies, right? And so those are really the best way to do it. And then finally, because we've done all of that homework, that's why then you can see these testimonials that are just so positive, because we've done all our homework to make sure that it survives the GI and that it's active.
Yeah, those human clinical studies that were conducted were randomized controlled studies. They were against a placebo, and they were very, very high quality studies. And so knowing the studies like we do, and having read all of those studies and studied those studies, I'm not surprised at all that we're getting the results that we're getting, because those results, basically, they're just a follow-up from the studies. And that was one of the things that just impressed me so much from the very early stages of this, was just how good the research was. Right. And, one of the things that we've had, and this is another question that we get quite frequently, but one of the things that we get, or questions that we get, is the research studies seem to be fairly small populations or fairly small sample size. However, I think what people have to understand is that sample size is very specific, and there's a reason for that. And now we've actually got a study that's about to be published hopefully in the next month or two, in the British Medical Journal, that actually has a very large population that's not so specific. And so by having a specific population, even though it's small, we've eliminated a lot of those confounders that could bias those studies and impact the results. And so that's one of the things that makes the studies such high quality. The critical appraisal of them is really, really good.
Yeah. And, I love that these, I call it safety through evolution. We are not dealing with synthesized or slightly modified. We're dealing with something that comes from nature that you've actually had in your diet, usually for thousands of years. Not you personally, because I know you're not that old, Alan, but the human family. And that way, we don't even really have to go do animal studies, because we know that they're safe. We'll do the human study, and the humans can report on how well it's working for them. So it's a great model, and there's a lot more where that came from, right? So far we've talked about how we've got 5 different peptides actually, but derived from fava, from yeast, from whey, from ginkgo, from ginseng. We've talked about how they are different to the therapeutic peptides. And of course, it was an obvious question that you guys were asking. Well, then, how do you prove that they can survive the GI route and actually work? And I actually love that. I love that this is available to us. Again, safety through evolution. And personally, I just I know that these therapeutic peptides are great. They work, but I'm just one of those people that doesn't really like to stick a needle in myself every now and then. I'd just much rather find something that's proven that I can take orally. I think there are a lot of people that maybe feel the way that I do on that. And as long as we know that it's legitimate, that it's working, that the science is.
Yeah. Dr. Bartlett, how long, and this is another question we get, but how long, and I think you've been with Make Wellness, for a couple of months now, right?
Yes.
And so you've had a fairly short experience with the products, but how long was it before you started to see results with the products?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think we start to see results quite quickly. Typically, when you have a nutritional supplement type product, and people ask that question, you say, well, we design our product so that it's going to give you what you need for 1 month. And so I think that's a really good rule of thumb, is like, yeah, you can't really take it one day and expect to see a difference. It really depends what you're looking for, right? Is it a feeling that you're looking for? Like, you can take caffeine and feel it straight away. You can take a vitamin and mineral supplement, and it might take a month or 2 or 3. If the vitamin or mineral supplement has, say, carotenoids in it, which are pigments from nature, you can actually test those in your skin or fasting blood, and you notice that actually it doesn't really start to accumulate for 6 weeks or more. Vitamin E has a long half-life. It takes about 6 weeks, but B vitamins are in your blood and gone within 12 hours, right? So it's different for everything. But one thing about peptides is they are signaling molecules. So as soon as you consume them, as soon as they get into your system and touch base with the cell, they're doing something. It's really quite quick. So just looking at it from a biochemistry physiology point of view, there's no reason why they can't start working immediately. But if you are, say, looking for a difference in your muscle preservation, things like that, then obviously the end result is going to take a month, 2 months, 3 months. And it also depends upon your lifestyle and how your lifestyle and your diet is complementing the activity that you're taking with the nutritional supplement. Yeah. So I know that sounds like a lot of arm waving, but that's my perspective. Just from a purely personal point of view, I went to the gym. Again, this is just testimonial, anecdotal. I went to the gym 2 weeks ago. Like, I do martial arts on a Saturday morning, and then my team says, "Hey, come pull some weights, Mark." I don't do that very often. So they just gave me a huge workout with bench pressing and stuff. And you know what happens? You get like really sore the next day, right? That's normal. Post-exercise muscle soreness. And my martial arts instructor said, "Dude, you are going to be hurting tomorrow and the next day. Like, I just gave you a massive workout with like pushing and then reverses." And the following week he said, "Well, how'd it go? Were you really sore?" And I said, and I was embarrassed to say, "No, I wasn't." I wasn't sore at all after that workout. That's the first time I've experienced that. And that kind of was a testament to me that it worked really well. Well, last week we did the same workout, and I hadn't taken my Fit for a couple of days beforehand. I was working from home and I forgot to bring them from the office, did that same workout, and that was a few days ago, and I'm still sore. So again, just an anecdote there from me, just showing how quickly it can work.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what, I will agree with the soreness, and I have put it to the test. Especially with a good hard leg workout with squats and leg presses, and coming in and lots of extensions and curls and stiff leg deadlifts, and you can put yourself through a really, really big exercise. And, when you're working big muscles like your glutes and your quads and so forth, I mean, you can get real sore to the point to where you can't hardly walk for 2 or 3 days. And that's the one thing that I've noticed, is that my soreness, I get sore. So I know that I got the work in, right? But I don't stay sore. And it seems like the older I get, the longer I stay sore, but not so much nowadays. And I've been taking the product now for a couple of months, pretty just religiously. Every single morning I hit my Fit and I hit my lean at 5 a.m. in the morning. And then by 5:30, I'm in the gym and I get my workout in. And man, it's amazing how much different I feel. But I'm also seeing those results from that as well. And I think it's the result of the entire program. You've not only got the muscle protein synthesis that it helps, you've got the muscle protein breakdown that it prevents, but it's that anti-inflammatory benefit that I feel like, for me, because I am very prone to inflammation just from beating my body up for so many years. And for me, it's that anti-inflammatory benefit, that that modulation of that anti-inflammatory mechanism that just has been tremendous. So, but again, I mean, the question, how long will it take me to see results? Well, you know what, 30 to 60 days, approximately. It could be sooner, could be later, depending on your biochemistry, depending on your diet, your lifestyle, how much sleep you get. It goes back to those 4 pillars of health. And really, this is just one little bitty component of an overall lifestyle. And that's what Make Wellness is about.
Yeah.
Right. Make Wellness is about lifestyle, and how do we enhance and optimize our lifestyle.
And here's another example of how you can sort of answer that question a couple of ways. So here's our lean product, and it's really designed to, I can't remember what the claims are, the approved claims, but really this is about sort of helping with satiety and appetite, right? So let's say I take this product it's really designed to work straight away to impact my satiety.
Yep.
So let's say it works and I feel like, oh, I don't have quite the level of hunger that I had. This is great because, if I'm on a weight management program, it takes a lot of things. It's a hard thing to do. And
Yep.
so whatever we can do to make it a little bit easier, make you less grumpy or make you less hungry, that's a good thing, right? So let's say it works straight away. Well, the question is, how long does it take to see results? Well, that's what I meant by the endpoint. So I saw a result immediately. Like I felt less hungry. That's a great result, immediate. But if you're talking about results as in terms of what's my body going to look like, is the belt a little, am I able to go in a notch on the belt, whatever it might be, if that's your endpoint, that's not going to be in a day, right? That's going to be a concerted effort of trying to be more physically active, of trying to sort of eat right, and sort of taking, a proven nutritional supplement that will help make that journey easier. Now you're talking about a month or 2 or 6, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the result you're looking for.
Yeah. And, one other thing, Dr. Bartlett, if you think about it, some people look at results based on a scale, and I hate scales, quite frankly. I don't think the scale is a good measuring device for results. And here's one reason why. If you look at this is a pound of lean muscle. And we know that the mechanism of action for FIT is to increase this. We also know that this is a pound of body fat. And so we know that lean, its mechanism of action is to decrease this. So if I'm taking FIT and lean together, you can see the difference in those two. It's massive. And so if I'm looking at a scale, I might have increased my muscle mass, decreased my body fat. I've improved my body composition ratio, but guess what? My scale hadn't moved. So the question is,
what you're focusing on there, just to clarify, is the density, right? So lean muscle is quite dense, and so it's going to be, per sort of, cubic inch, it's going to be heavier than adipose tissue. So that's why sometimes the scale is a little bit deceptive, right? Because let's say you're building muscle but also losing fat, you may not even see that register on the scale because the muscle weighs more, and the muscle's great. Because when you are at rest, the muscle is burning more calories. So the more muscle you have, they call that the basal metabolic rate, that you're burning more calories, which we kind of need these days because, you can go out and exercise. I'll ask you guys a question. If I eat a Snickers bar, how many calories is that? Do you remember, Alan? It's like 100 calories or 120 calories, or maybe
just for the little bitty bite-sized one. If you're eating a real big Snickers bar, it's about 400 calories.
Isn't that crazy? So let's say the bite-sized one is 100 calories. How much exercise do you have to do to get rid of that 100 calories? It's a mile run for most of us. Run a mile. So the amount of physical activity just to burn off that 100 calories of indiscretion is quite high. So the ideal situation is if you've got a lot of muscle, you're not actually having to exercise by all means, but just at rest, your body is consuming more calories, which is a nice place to be. That's why we want to build muscle.
Yeah. Now another question that we get quite often regarding kind of the same thing, how long does it take to see results, is, are there any concerns with the long-term use of our products? And of course, we know that the half-life of those peptides has a lot to do with long-term use, correct?
Absolutely, yes. I will say it again: safety through evolution, right? So the peptides that are in fava, like we've been eating fava beans for a long time, and there are peptides in there that are active, right? But so I consider it, these precision bioactive peptides are more like food, right? Yeah. Because they just have a very gentle effect. And actually, yes, Alan, you hit on it. A lot of it's about what we call the half-life. So the half-life, it's just this basic concept in biology and also in nuclear physics, right? Where, but in biology, you have a message that's sent. The body produces a peptide, and maybe it produces like, I don't know, 1 million molecules like this. And the body is actually designed to start to degrade that message as soon as it's sent. It's a little bit like the fire alarm going off. Like when the water has put out the fire alarm should stop. It shouldn't keep going, right? So you have the message, and you have the way of breaking down that message immediately. And when you think of, there's a peptide that we all know in the body that, when you eat food, that peptide is made by L cells in the GI tract that go to your brain and tell you you're full. They go to the tissues and tell you you're full. And that's a great peptide messenger. And in the body, that peptide has a half-life of like 2 minutes. That means in 2 minutes, there's half as much. That means in 4 minutes, there's a quarter as much. And so there's this huge, rapid degrading of that message. So that if the body continues to eat food, then it has to send the signal more. The body stops eating food, then the message goes away. So it's a beautiful design. Some of the therapeutic peptides, for example, have designed those peptides to last for a week or more in the body. So you can see there's a huge difference between therapeutic and these natural peptides because of evolution. And I feel like this gentle, natural approach is actually why we can confidently tell you that there aren't concerns about long-term use of these make wellness peptides. These are not like drugs. These are natural substances that are naturally degraded by the body's systems. And that's why we can guarantee the safety of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. If you don't mind, I want to add just one thing to what you just said, because I think it's so important for people to understand the importance of that short half-life. Because when you have a really, really, really long half-life of a week or sometimes even more, 10 days, depending on how they engineered that specific peptide or that drug, what it causes your body to do is sit there and it goes, okay, I've got this much of this drug in here and it's been here forever. I'm just going to shut down my natural production of it. Right. And that's what we don't want with ours. We don't want our body to be shutting down any of its natural processes. We want to optimize those processes, not shut them down. And that's that negative feedback loop that we're always referring to. And so,
yeah. And let me use just really a caveat here. We are certainly not vilifying therapeutic peptides. They have their role. Can you imagine life for a diabetic without insulin and these other things? They're very important. The difference is they're under a doctor's supervision and presumably safe as when used as directed under a doctor's supervision. But the question 5 about the concerns about long-term use, that's the context of the question that we're answering, is that, yes, these are a very different kettle of fish. Short half-life from nature, broken down by the body's system naturally very quickly, and therefore that's an indicator of safe long-term use.
Yeah, optimize that body. That's a great thing. So did you notice when you started taking the products, here's another question, is there a detox effect? Did you notice any kind of a detox effect when you started the peptides?
Okay. Question 6, is there a detox effect when starting peptides? So let me qualify the question and answer a little bit. I've been in this sort of supplement area, nutrition area, for more than 30 years. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, both of us, both Alan and I, we answer product questions, right? We're a small company right now. We're a startup. We do it all, don't we? We wear all the hats. And so we are the product support guys. And it's super common that people will say, oh man, like, so I feel a bit nauseous, or I've got a headache, and is it the product? Sometimes people call that a detox effect. I just call it like when you make a change, things happen. And sometimes you feel it at first, but it generally goes away, right? So I would call it a transitory adaptation effect. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, the company that I was working for, we formulated a product that was for energy, natural energy from a medicinal mushroom. And we just got a bunch of calls from people saying, oh man, I've got a headache. And my team was a little worried at first, saying, wow, that's weird. Like this is an ingredient that's been used for hundreds of years, and we haven't sort of done a crazy dose. And we have clinical studies, and in our safety studies, it didn't show anything to do with headaches. And so we really dug into it. We called several hundred people and asked them about any changes that they made along with this product. And what we learned was that these people because we had told them the story of natural energy, many of these people gave up their coffee that they were drinking every day. So they suddenly got a headache. And so like, oh, well, that's a caffeine withdrawal. Nothing to do with this product, but a coincident lifestyle change.
Yeah.
But sometimes you legitimately might feel, queasy stomach or something like that. What we would advise if you feel like that, I think it's transitory, but maybe change the way that you do it. Change the time of day, maybe half the dose at first until you get used to it. Maybe take it with food. Those things usually get over it. But you don't expect, with a natural product, there is a very wide therapeutic window. What I mean by that is a large amount, even double the dose, triple the dose, 10 times the dose, doesn't usually have a major sort of side effect type issue. But everyone's different, and people will feel a little bit of a transitory effect. What are your thoughts on that, Alan?
No, I think transitory adaptation is a perfect description of exactly what's going on, because most people, when they start taking products, they start changing their lifestyle a little bit. They try to start exercising a little bit. They try to start doing different things. And so if you'll really, really start diving into their lifestyles, you find out that a lot of times some of these people are getting really serious, especially this time of the year, right? It's January. And fortunately, we're all the way through Quitter's Day. So we've already bypassed that. So everybody's still into their new year, new me. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to lose body fat. I'm going to change my body composition. And it's just over and over and over and over. And you know what? When you do that, you're going to experience some changes in your body. And those are all great things. And the other question is, what are the potential adverse effects of taking Make Wellness products? But you know what? We've already addressed the potential of adverse effects with the peptides. However, one of the things that we always talk about is people can be allergic to some of these ingredients. People can be sensitive. We do have some caffeine in 3 of our products. There's 20 milligrams in lean. There's 100 milligrams in fit and 100 milligrams in ENERGIZED. So people can be sensitive to that, but there literally are no more potential for adverse effects than they are with any other dietary supplement. In fact, most of the research studies, the adverse effects were minimal to none. And so, and there's been a lot of studies conducted on them.
Yeah,
so
good point, Alan. Good point. I forgot about that. We have support ingredients, and you can't rule out that people might have allergies or sensitivities to some of these things.
Yeah. And that's, that's just natural, and it's going to happen. If somebody breaks out in a rash, they need to stop taking the product. And there's nothing that you or I or we or anybody else could do about that. That's just their body. Yep. My wife is that way to one of my favorite ingredients, astaxanthin. And I know astaxanthin is one of the most powerful antioxidants. And I know you're yes. But she cannot take astaxanthin. She breaks out in hives with it.
Wow.
And so, it's just one of those deals. So we have to make sure that she doesn't take any of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, now, Dr. Bartlett, let's move into kind of usage and dosage. We've been here already for a while. Let's try to get through another section.
Commend everyone on their stamina. We've got 7 minutes left, and we know we're not going to get through this list. Like we're through about a quarter of the list. But as we mentioned, we tried to design the Q&A here as a little bit of education and make it interesting for you. Next week, we will continue some of this Q&A in subsequent Thursdays. We won't get through the whole list today. Next week, we'll talk about one of our products, the following week we'll probably sort of come back to the list and answer some of your questions. But let's use the time remaining to talk to answer a couple of the questions on usage and dosage. Okay, what's the first question there, Alan?
So what's the best time to take each product? Yeah, and I'll give you my point of view on it, and I talk a lot about it, and I know we've talked a lot about it over the last few weeks. The best time to take the product is when you're going to take the product, when works for you. And so the great thing about our products is there's no designated time. Now, I probably wouldn't take Energized past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I think you have to be, some common sense has to be here as well. I wouldn't take Calm if I was going to go on a long drive. Like tomorrow, I've got a 600
or activate heavy machinery.
Yeah. So tomorrow I'm literally driving 685 miles from my house to as far south as you can go. And so there's no way I'm taking Calm before I jump in that car and drive that far. Right. And so you've got to use some common sense, but my example is I love taking my Fit and Lean 5 a.m. in the morning. I love taking my Focused and Energized at 10 a.m. in the morning. I've already got 5 hours on my day at that point. I'm getting a little bit tired mid-morning. That's when I take my product. Now, compliance is the most important part of our products. You have to take them to get the benefits, and don't be afraid to experiment to find out what works for you. So, tell us when you take your products, Dr. Bartlett. When do you like to take them?
Yeah, you touched on a couple of really good points there. Compliance is important, and it's so easy to forget. I already told you and confessed that I forgot last Friday and Saturday to take my Fit that I take every day. Yep. So these habits and these rituals that you have are super important, whatever works for you. For me, I love to take, I usually work out in the morning, but I don't usually eat till around lunchtime. So I like to take my Fit as soon as I arrive in the office, and it's not very long after I've done my workout. I know some people like to take it before. The take home here is, from the research studies, it doesn't really matter whether you're on a full stomach or an empty stomach when you take Fit. Now, when it comes to Lean, because of how it works so beautifully for me in terms of my levels of satiety, I like to take that within half an hour of eating lunch, so that it helps to regulate my appetite so that I don't end up eating too much and feeling hungry. So, that's one that I time carefully with food. That makes sense, right? And then, as you mentioned, the Calm, the Energized, those are, when you want to be sleepy and when you want to have more energy. So, but in general, I think that the take-home message is that the peptides are, they're not super fussy about whether you are eating food or on an empty stomach.
Agree. I think that's a great thing about them. Now, another question is, can all the products be taken together? And that's a little bit of a tricky question, because am I going to sit there and take all of those products at the same time? Or does that mean can all the products be taken throughout the day on the same day? And of course, the answer to that is absolutely. You could take them throughout the day, depending on what you need, when you need it. But I'm not sure that I would take all 6 products at exactly the same time. So it seems like the Calm and Energized might have a little battle there.
But the basic take home there again is that treat these more like foods than drugs, right? And so, yes, we have a very educated consumer base here, and we are used to sort of talking about contraindications or interactions, right? And so I think a caveat there is, yes, if you are on a medication, it's always a good idea. Or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor, maybe take the product in and say, this is what it is, get some advice there. But in general, the products in the context of taking them all, yes, they are safe. They are more like foods than drugs. And so you don't have sort of these interactions that are negative. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. It makes total sense. Yep. So, another question is, Fit a pre-workout drink? I would say for me, Fit is a pre-workout drink. For you, and the way you take it, it's a post-workout recovery drink.
Right. So the answer is it's what you want it to be, right?
Fit. You want it to be. Yeah, absolutely. And so, the fourth question, I think we've already answered. Should the Make Wellness product be taken on an empty stomach? That's absolutely not necessary.
Yep, can be if you prefer it that way. A lot of it, again, is to do with your habits and rituals that compliance is more important here. And the evidence is that they don't have to be taken on an empty stomach. You can do it either way.
Yeah. The next question is really interesting, and it's this. Question number 5. Can these products be taken more than once a day? And I'm going to answer that real quick my way, if you don't mind. And I'm going to say this. There are days, you heard Dr. Bartlett talk about he eats his first meal at about noon every day. That's his first meal. I typically eat 1 meal a day, and my meal is at 3 o'clock. And so, but I will say that, like, after a hard workout or, something I've done in the morning, there are days where I feel like I've got hunger starting to attack me long before 3 o'clock gets here. And so what I do is there are days where I might take lean twice a day. I'll take it in that first thing at 5 a.m. in the morning. And there are other times that I will take another dose about 10:30 or 11 right after I've taken my Energized and my Focused. And so, I don't think there's any issues at all. You just, if you become sensitive to it, I mean, what do you think, Dr. Bartlett?
Yep, I agree 100%. Again, these are not products where you have to be like super careful about the dose because suddenly you're going to sort of bump up against side effects. So if you need a little more, and you're a bigger guy than me too, Alan, right? So, it makes sense that a little more for you is just fine. They seem to work for me at the prescribed dose. So I'm fine with that. And they're designed that way. But if people want to take a little more, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And most days I get away with 1, but there are some days where I just feel like I need a little bit extra. And those days I'm not afraid to do that. So
I might take Extra Fit next time my martial arts instructor takes me to the gym. I might need a little extra help.
Take a before and an after on that one. Yeah. So the next question.
We're very close to time, but I don't think you guys will mind if we just answer 2 more questions in this category, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's forge ahead. Just a couple more minutes.
All right. Question number 6. Can capsules be opened or powders mixed into hot water without affecting their efficacy? So, you want to answer that, or you want me to answer that? Or
I would be maybe just making an educated guess here. So I feel that peptides are important because of their shape, right? It's this lock and key system. The peptide works by having a particular shape that works with a receptor. And so that shape is super important. Now, we do know that, from the example of proteins, that they are denatured if they're boiled or cooked, right? Think of an egg. You crack that egg into the pan, and you've got the yolk that's yellow, and you've got this clear liquid on the outside. And when you cook it, it turns white. The reason is because it's changing the shape of that peptide, and it is actually denaturing. And so I would say from that example that open the capsule by all means, if you don't mind the taste of the capsule being mixed into water, and the product itself into water. I would just say, we know that it's stable at body temperature, which is 37 degrees Celsius or 98 point something Fahrenheit. My thought would be we probably shouldn't exceed that too much. I'd worry about the structure of the peptide. What do you think, Alan?
I'm in total agreement with it. I always tell people, warm water is considered about 120 or, somewhere thereabouts. I always say don't go above 120 for sure. 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it's a little bit hotter than body temperature, but I certainly wouldn't do that. Heat destroys the peptides, and we don't want to do anything to damage our peptides, even though there's those structural and, those intuitive built-in features that help to strengthen those peptides. That temperature, and that's why the manufacturing process, the temperature is so critical. Like you're talking about, within just fractions of degrees maintained throughout that entire process. They know that.
These products are carefully crafted. And so we've used the right, in the manufacture, the right amount of enzyme, the right amount of time, the right temperature. And these temperatures don't usually exceed that 120 degrees that you're talking about. And be sure that these this is not just in the lab, but in the manufacturing scale up. These the manufacturing process to isolate these peptides is absolutely followed to the T. So we wouldn't want to sort of then ruin them later by boiling them or something.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so let's go one more question. Last question. We get asked this a lot. Can make wellness products break a fast?
That's a funny question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I kind of think it's worded funny. Like so I guess I use fit to break my fast, if you consider it breakfast, every morning. So you can, right? Because as we've mentioned, you can have them on an empty stomach. They work just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, you know, especially, I mean, you've got to think fit, it's fava bean protein, right? And we know protein breaks a fast. And so, yes, we do know that, you know, a lot of the make wellness products, the peptides in the products are protein derivatives, and those proteins can break a fast. And so I think you have to be really cautious with that.
Yeah. Well, I think we got through a great list today. We answered 14 questions, and we weren't very efficient, but the focus was on teaching, right?
Well, you know, in those 14 questions, if you think about it, Dr. Bartlett, I mean, we probably expanded those 14 questions into another 14 plus questions on top of those with our education of them also. So,
right. Yeah, so we gave you guys what you wanted. There's been a high demand for us answering them. Again, apologies that we don't usually do that when we are teaching on this podcast, because we just can't sort of focus on the questions and sort of try to sort of cover the curriculum material. Next week, we'll go back to curriculum, and then the following week, we'll answer the rest of the list. So hopefully you guys can hang out until then.
All right. Everybody, thank you very much. Thank you for joining Dr. Bartlett and myself tonight. We love teaching you guys. We love giving you information. We hope you got some nuggets tonight that you can take and use to build your businesses and to support your customers. And we hope that you will join us again next Thursday as we continue our teaching curriculum and we get ready for our convention in March. And so everybody, you guys have a great night. Get back with the person that invited you to the call. And if you have any questions, make sure you send those questions into us and we'll get them answered as fast as we can. You guys have a great night.
Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dr. Bartlett.